Christ their rock, their shelter and their might, their strength and solace in the well-fought fight. Thou in the darkness deep their one true light. Alleluia, alleluia. O blessed communion of the saints divine, we live in struggle, they in glory shine, yet all are one in thee, for all are thine. Alleluia, alleluia. And when the strife is fierce, the conflict long, steals on the ear the distant triumph song, and hearts are brave again, and arms are strong. Alleluia, alleluia. Please be seated.
Morning.
My God.
Folks on Clinton Avenue join the folks on Winton Road to gather online and outdoors in person. It is good to be together. And all good things must come to an end. As COVID rates seem to be declining in our area, and as each Sunday gets a little chillier and or a little wetter each week, we find ourselves today on the last Sunday of this joint collaboration. And we find ourselves observing, yes, it is a very sad thing, and it is also a Sunday where we find ourselves observing a joint Sunday of remembrance. In some ways, this is a first time ever, since it's the first time we're doing this together, and that will be different, but this Sunday in both churches has a deep tradition and history. And so this morning we have an intergenerational, story-based service that will include rituals beloved by both congregations. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee people, on whose ancestral lands First Universalist and First Unitarian now stand. If you are here for the first time this morning, we are so glad that you are here, and we hope that you will connect with one or both of our congregations, joining with us and finding a home within Unitarian Universalism. Online, you'll see links in the chat to visitors forums, and here in person, we invite you to stop by our welcome table and over by the back and let us know how we can connect with you so that we can offer you a welcome beyond just today. I am the Reverend A.J. Van Tyne, Assistant Minister of First Unitarian, leading worship today with a whole host of characters: Reverend Lane, Reverend Sherry, Reverend Michelle, Sheila, our two music directors, Tommy and Brock. We've got Gabe and Brendan and Emily and Eric doing audio and video and sound. We've got Anne providing wonderful music. And I don't think I'm missing anybody there. Excellent. There's a lot of names to keep track of. We, of course, have ushers and greeters and chaplains and hosts making all of this possible. And, of course, it is not church without all of you good people. It is good to be together again.
We're going to begin with our child slating words from our children.
already first.
Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Oh, now that they're signing, that means they're from the Universalist Church, or maybe they're our kids. I don't know.
Will you please join me this morning in singing our doxology? From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue. I know this morning that we have a tenacious group of worship attenders here in person this morning, because y'all would not be here if you were not tenacious in this rain and in this weather. And I know we have a group of tenacious worshipers with us online, because these folks have been worshiping with us online throughout a pandemic, throughout the past year and a half, throughout the past year. So let us make space in our hearts and our minds for the story of our service this morning. It is a story entitled Fatima, the Spinner and the Tent, adapted by Idris Shah. It is a Turkish Sufi tale. So let us prepare our ears and our eyes and our hearts to hear the story.
Once there was, and there wasn't, a girl named Fatima who lived in a city of western Turkey. Having lost her mother at birth, she was the lone and dutiful daughter of a spinner. Protective and kind toward his orphan child, the spinner savored time with her and had great patience and faith in both prosperous times and in times of scarcity. This patience rubbed off on Fatima, who seemed wise beyond her years. One day, her father said to her,
Fatima, will you come with me on a journey to the islands of the Mediterranean? I'm looking for new customers, and perhaps you will find a handsome and prosperous young man to be your husband.
A few days after, they set out to sea. On the way to Crete, a storm overtook the boat and capsized it. Fatima woke to find herself cast upon the beach, the only survivor of the shipwreck. She could barely remember her life back home due to the injuries in her exposure in the sea. However, she did remember a few things: her name, that she was a spinner, and that she had lost her father. And she could feel a sense that she must be patient somehow and have faith for the future. A few days later, a kind family found her stranded there, and although they were poor, they took her into their humble home. They were crafters who wove cloth. Now, at this point in the story, we're going to enter it into the story in a little different way. So I'm going to ask you to rise in body or in spirit And at home, same for you, if you like to rise in body or in spirit, and do what's comfortable for your body. This family
Step out.
of weavers that surrounded her felt for Fatima's struggle. She was alone. She was merely trying to begin again and barely comforting herself by rocking a little bit back and forth. And as she watched this family of weavers and began herself to weave, she could feel some sense of power in herself because she was, after all, a spinner, and it was at least somewhat familiar to her. And so she grew a little bit more empowered in her heart. And it so happened that the family of weavers came beside her in ways that were unexpected. And she soon opened her heart to them. On her one side and on the other, she recognized that she was, after all, connected to not only to them, but to all things in life. And so it was, over time, she got really better at weaving, and her heart started to open. She noticed she was healing with this love of this family. So much so that she had even some delight. It was very healing for her that she had a new balance in life. And feelings of warmth. So much that her gratitude also grew. But we can never predict life. And so it was that one morning when she was down by the sea, a band of slave traders landed and carried Fatima away, along with other captives. And although she bitterly lamented her fate, Fatima found no sympathy from the traffickers who took her to Istanbul to sell her as a slave. Her world had collapsed yet again. There were a few buyers at the slave market. Looking forlorn yet trustworthy, Fatima was spotted by a businessman who had come for slaves to make masts for ships in his woodyard. He purchased her to become his wife's maidservant. And arriving back home, however, the businessman was informed that his largest cargo of masts had been pirated. No longer would he be able to afford workers, so he, his wife, and Fatima were left alone to work at the heavy labor. the businessman took his wife and Fatima into a grove of Turkish oaks to find the best trees to cut down. Fatima wandered among the tall canopy of branches and at once was overcome by grief. The loss of her mother, the loss of her father, the loss of her homeland, the loss of her second beloved family, and now the loss of her very freedom. It all came to her at once. She did not think she could have faith or patience or will to start over again. The roots of the trees there seemed to envelop her as she sat lamenting every turn of fate that had left her rootless and alone. The leaves were like so many endings that she had borne.
We move from this grove of Turkish oaks to the maples and oaks of New York. Each of you should have a leaf bearing the name of one of our beloveds, the names of people in our congregations, the names of trans and gender non-conforming beloveds who have been killed, and the names of those who have died by gun violence here in Rochester. Some of these names are names you know only in the newsletter or the news, and for others, these names are family. All of these leaves are on the tree of our human family. All of these names are our beloveds that we carry forward. I invite you on your leaf now, and if you don't have one, ushers will come around and make sure that you have at least one to hang. But I invite you to also add the names of those who you would like to remember, those you would like to add to our memory tree. To hold in your hand a leaf of our beloved and to carry it forward when you are ready. You are invited.
So yeah, we just want to kind of bind them on there because it's a little windy out today, right? Makes sense? Yeah, so I just kind of been like rounding them around. Good to me. Yeah, let's make sure Tangerine stays on there, huh? There's some room around here if folks want to come. There's some room around this side if folks want to come around this side. Feel free. If folks would like to come around this side, there's room over here. If you'd like to. Some extra room. Excuse me, sorry. If folks would like to come around this side, the back side has plenty of room for hanging out right here. Feel free. There's lots of room. Ooh, fun. Katie and Eileen, if you guys want to come around this way, we'll be able to do the leaves over here. Beautiful. Good morning.
leaves were like so many endings born. Upon the high stars and low branches, all of these names are beloved. May this memory tree and our community be a blessing of remembrance.
I invite you now to join me in singing as we remain seated, All My Memories of Love. All my memories of love hang upon my stars. All the souls I've lost to tears now the autumn jars. And the air around me here thickens with their song. Sing again their nameless tunes, sing again and strong. Willows in September touch the water clear, set among the rushes tall of the flowing year. Rising up from sunlit past comes the shadowed side, running toward me silently, love to fortify. Many are the graceful hearts hung upon this tree, and it seems there's room for mine on these branches free. And the sky above the tree, whether wet or bright, is my ease and comforting, my good news and light.
Fatima caught a glimpse of the businessman and his wife walking beside one another. She remembered the patience and faith of her father, that he carried on with so much love for her when he was left all alone in the world. And so she found strength to accompany this couple in the hour of their need. In fact, she became the businessman's trusted helper to the point where he granted her her freedom and took her on as an assistant. Thus it was that she became comparatively happy in her third career making masts. One day the man said to her,
Fatima, I would like you to go to India as my agent with a cargo full of ship's masts, but be sure to sell them at a profit.
Now, despite her fear of the sea, Fatima set off. After all, she thought, what are the chances of me being shipwrecked twice in a lifetime? But when the ship was off the coast of China, a typhoon wrecked it, and she found herself once again cast upon the seashore of a strange land. Once again, she wept bitterly, for she felt that nothing in her life was working according to her expectations. Whenever things seemed to be going well, something came along and destroyed all of her hopes.
Why is it
She cried out,
that anytime I try to do something, it comes to grief? Why does all of this happen to me and not another?
but there was no answer. She could not even begin to find the words or the reason, but at least she could still move. At least she was not seriously harmed. So she picked herself up from the sand and started inland.
I was so sad. I just don't know where to begin. But I know that no matter what happens to us, we can always come back to our breath, right? So let's see what we still have together. If you want to join me in waking up our bodies and seeing what we still have to work with and be grateful for. Can we still breathe? That was good. That was good. How about into our belly now? Good. And deep into our toes. And out with a sigh. We can still breathe. Thank you, breath. How about our bodies? Let's see how they're doing. Whether you tighten with me or maybe tap, let's waken up each part of our bodies. Your head and your neck and your shoulders. They're still there, head? Tight, 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 tight. And relax. Well, that's something. How about our shoulders and arms and hands? Are they still there? Tight, 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 tight. And relax. Oh, I'm glad to have you. Arms and hands. How about our torsos, our chest and belly, our whole back? To tap or tighten them. Oh, tight, 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 tight. And relax. Oh, that feels better. Okay. And your seat and your legs down to your toes. Tap or tighten. Tight, 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 tight. And relax. Oh, there was some popping there. I think that's good. And a deep breath. And shake it out. I still have a body. We still have a body. Thank you, body. And our breath. Thank you, breath. I think we can keep going.
Now, it so happened that nobody in China had heard of Fatima or knew anything about her troubles. But there was a legend that a certain stranger, a woman, would one day arrive and that she would be able to make a tent for the emperor. And since there was no one yet in China who'd made tents as such, and everyone looked forward to this strange visit with the liveliest anticipation, that in order to make sure that this foreigner, when she arrived, would not be missed, successive emperors of China had followed the tradition of sending heralds once a year to all the towns and the villages of the land, searching for any foreign woman to present at the palace. When Fatima arrived in the town near the Chinese seashore, one such herald happened to be there. He spoke to her through an interpreter and explained that she would have to go and see the emperor. So Fatima was brought before the great emperor of China. He asked her,
Lady, can you make me a tent?
I think so.
She asked for rope, but there was none available. So, remembering her life as a spinner, she collected flax. And she made rope. Her father's gentle presence was with her hands, hour after hour after hour.
Dear ones, while Fatima is collecting flax to make rope for her tent, so now we come to our collection of our offering. All that a community has and all that it is what we each bring to it. And we've been coming together, bringing our own resources, our own spirits, our own journeys together for these several weeks to ride this part of the journey together. It has been a big lift involving many resources, much staff time and volunteer time, and getting this big tent organized. And it has been a joyful and precious collaboration, an opportunity to deepen our relationships, our connections with one another, and with our shared living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. In gratitude for this opportunity and in honor of the friendship between our two churches, we now give thanks by giving generously to this morning's offering. You are invited to give online to both or either church via their website or the links provided in the chat, or by leaving cash in one of the two offering boxes on the side tables. The offering will now be given and gratefully and humbly received.
And when October goes, the snow begins to fly above the smoky roofs. I watch the planes go by, the children running home beneath a twilight sky. Oh, for the fun of them when I was one of them. And when October goes, the same old dream appears, and you are in my arms to share the happy years. I turn my head away to hide the helpless tears. Oh, how I hate to see October go. And when October goes, the same old dream appears, and you are in my arms to share the happy years. I turn my head away to hide the helpless tears. Oh, how I hate to see October I should be over it now, I know. It doesn't matter much how old I grow. I hate to see October go.
Then Fatima asked for stout fabric, but the Chinese had none of the kind she needed. So, drawing on her experience with the family of weavers whom she had been taken from, she gathered thread. As she was weaving the cloth, villagers came and looked amazed at her skill. And finally, an interpreter asked her where she had learned to do this. She recalled the names of her second family, who had little but gave her a place in their hearts as an orphan. And word spread throughout the land of her skill and how she had been separated from their deep love and their generosity. And as it sometimes goes, when the villagers, both young and old, would come and sit beside Fatima, they would talk with her about the loved ones that they had also lost or been separated from. Fatima did not understand most of their words, but their language was like a song of their names that seemed to find healing in her ears. She wove steadily, day upon day, threading their voices into the cloth of the tent.
Dear ones, the names of our lost loved ones are important. They matter. And if you, like me, have been sitting here and watching Claire so tenderly attend to the names on our tree, to just see the ways that we care for one another and tend to these names and make sure that they are held in reverence. Thank you, Claire, for your service there. As we begin to hear and prepare ourselves to hear a sung litany of names, I just want to invite you into a brief moment of prayer with me. Spirit, source of our being, source of our creation, and returning point when we die. Open our ears and our minds and our hearts to hear the names, to really hear them and be attentive to them. May our courageous and grieving hearts prepare. May we hold space for our own grieving, for our own memories, for our collective honoring, and may we make space in our hearts to hear the names. Amen. So we prepare to sing the names this morning. The list this year is quite long, and it was intended to be longer. Usually we include the names of those who have been killed due to gun violence here in Rochester, yet over 50 people have been killed due to gun violence here in Rochester as of September of this year, making this the deadliest year of shootings in Rochester's history. I wanted to just take a pause and take a moment to let that sink in. This morning we lift up the list of loved ones remembered as a ritual act of remembrance. Between each name is sung the line, "You are not forgotten." If you feel called to join in singing the words together, let us make space to do so. If you just need to sit with the names and listen, pay attention to what your body and your heart need. Let us make space for our Litany of the Saints.
Diana Alexander,
You are not forgotten.
Aya Ashton,
You are not forgotten.
Alison Joy Hoggins,
You are not forgotten.
50 Bass,
You are not forgotten. Biana Muffin Banks.
you are not forgotten.
Tiara Banks.
You are not forgotten.
Kaya Banks.
You are not forgotten.
Eric Bellman.
You are not
forgotten.
Bruce Philman,
You are not forgotten.
Oh Black,
You are not forgotten.
Bob Boak,
You are not forgotten.
John Borek,
You are not forgotten. E.J. Boykin.
you are not forgotten.
Beverly Braun.
You are not forgotten.
Alexis
You
Braxton.
are not forgotten.
Jeffrey J.J. Bright.
You are not forgotten. Dick Brosh,
You are not forgotten.
Abe Hall,
You are not forgotten.
Anna Butaro,
You are not forgotten.
Jasmine Kennedy,
You are not forgotten. Vina Carrillo.
you are not forgotten.
Miss Coco.
You are not forgotten.
Mary Ellen
You are
Collins.
not forgotten.
Kenneth Coy.
You are not forgotten. Bob Conklin,
You are not forgotten.
Brian Connolly,
You are not forgotten.
John Speed Cole,
You are not forgotten.
Dan Cooney,
You are not forgotten. Jahira D'Alto.
you are not forgotten.
Marjorie DeMalley.
You are not forgotten.
Alexis Sean DeSourcy.
You are not forgotten.
James Dillon.
You are not forgotten. Jennifer Tillett,
You are not forgotten.
Mildred Downs Ross,
You are not forgotten.
Dorothy Eager,
You are not forgotten.
Jim Eager,
You are not forgotten. John Philip Elwell.
you are not forgotten.
Susan Emerson.
You are not forgotten.
James J. Emerson.
You are not forgotten.
William G. Emerson.
You are not forgotten. Ted Essie,
You are not forgotten.
Judy Essie,
You are not forgotten.
Maitland Evan.
You are not forgotten.
Dog Evan.
You are not forgotten. Mary Ann Evett.
You are not forgotten.
Remy Fennell.
You are not forgotten.
Ralph Field.
Forgotten.
Dick Fitz.
You are not forgotten. Doris Helen Foster Smith.
You are not forgotten.
Jean Frank.
You are not forgotten.
Jenny Frey.
You are not forgotten.
Ginger Graham.
You are not forgotten. Mel
You
Grove.
are not forgotten.
Jane Gunter McCoy.
You are not forgotten.
Brianna Hamilton.
You are not forgotten.
Thomas Hardin.
You are not forgotten. Eric Hatton.
You are not forgotten.
William Hay.
You are not forgotten.
James Hendrick.
You are not forgotten.
Danny Henson.
You are not forgotten. Serenity Holland.
You are not forgotten.
Emil Homerick.
You are not forgotten.
B.J. Howard.
You are not forgotten.
James Humphrey.
You are not forgotten. Dominique Jackson.
You are not forgotten.
Ben Jackson.
You are not forgotten.
Ed James.
You are not forgotten.
Hope Johnson.
You are not forgotten. Pooh Johnson.
You are not forgotten.
Pierre Laprie Cartier.
You are not forgotten.
Gary Krill.
You are not forgotten.
Christina Kraft.
You are not forgotten. Mark Langley.
You are not forgotten.
Paul Law.
You are not forgotten.
Noel Lawson.
You are not forgotten.
Tierra Marie Lewis.
You are not forgotten. Dominique Lusher.
You are not forgotten.
David Malone.
You are not forgotten.
Rebecca Malone.
You are not forgotten.
Zoella Zoe Rose Martinez.
You are not forgotten. Rachel Marzu.
You are not forgotten.
Bob McClellan.
You are not forgotten.
Kathleen McGarvey.
You are not forgotten.
Suzanne McLaughlin.
You are not forgotten. Bonnie Meeker.
You are not forgotten.
Desire Monet.
You are not forgotten.
James Moody.
Not forgotten.
Donald Morgan.
Not forgotten. Jean Marie.
You are not forgotten.
Mary Morgan. Jürgen Nowakowski.
You are not forgotten.
Robert O'Keefe.
You are not forgotten.
Brianna Pardo.
You are not forgotten. Maria Padula Phillips. You are not forgotten. Jada Peterson. You are not forgotten. Lee Play. You are not forgotten. Royal Poetical Stride. You are not forgotten.
Eleanor Porter.
You are not forgotten.
Peggy Rezzowali.
You are not forgotten.
Lev Rose.
You are not forgotten.
And Rose.
You are not forgotten. Diamond Kyrie Sanders. You are not forgotten. Barry Sanderson. You are not forgotten. Bertha Santarocco. You are not forgotten. Iris Santos. You are not forgotten.
Carol Schleg.
You are not forgotten.
Sandra Scully.
You are not forgotten.
Jim Sidney.
You are not forgotten.
Talia Small.
You are not forgotten. Florence Sperduti.
You are not forgotten.
Danny Strong.
You are not forgotten.
Elizabeth May Strong.
You are not forgotten.
Oliver Ollie Taylor.
You are not forgotten. Tiffany Thomas.
You are not forgotten.
Odie Thomas.
You are not forgotten.
James Traynor.
You are not forgotten.
Samuel Edmund Damian Valentine.
You are not forgotten. Shay Vanderpump. You are not forgotten. Sophie Vasquez.
You are not forgotten.
Marty Viverberg.
You are not forgotten.
Kerry Washington.
You are not forgotten. Anita Wesson.
You are not forgotten.
Brian Weston.
You are not forgotten.
Alison Wilder.
You are not forgotten.
Rollin Wilson.
You are not forgotten. Archie Wilson Berger.
You are not forgotten.
Whispering Wind Bear Spirit.
You are not forgotten.
Marjorie Winters.
You are not forgotten.
All the souls. You are not forgotten.
Please join me now in a time of shared silence. May the silence we have shared continue to hold us and heal us all.
It's real.
When Fatima completed the cloth, she asked for tent poles, but there were none. So Fatima, remembering how she had been trained by the mask maker of Istanbul, looked for an appropriate wood and craftily cut the tent poles she needed. She knew she could begin again in this land as she had before in the oak grove. At last, with all the proper materials at hand, Fatima constructed an elaborate, magnificent tent.
I lost my person over here.
When the emperor saw it, a wide smile spread across his face. He was so impressed that he offered Fatima the fulfillment of any wish she cared to name.
I would just like to stay here, Your Highness, in China. The open-heartedness of your people has shown me that I can make my home here again.
And so it was that Fatima married and lived in happiness, surrounded by her children until the end of her days. And there ends our tale.
I invite you now to rise in voice, body, and spirit, and sing with me Breaths by Isaiah Barnwell. This is one you might want to move a little to heat up. Oh, there we go. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Za, shh, shh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the moaning trees. They are in the Can I borrow some words here? I thought I knew this one. Let's try that again. Let's tell you what. Let's try that again, folks. We're gonna back up. Are there not words here? Oh, it's no. I had this one memorized until I didn't. Do we have? Is there music inserts? No.
Let's just do that whoosh ah part.
Let's do that whoosh and
That's
ah.
all of our favorite parts.
Well, I tell you what, the beginning's pretty easy. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Za whoosh ah whoosh. Let's sing that a couple times. Think, oh, well, if they don't have the words, well, let's try that together. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Sa whoosh. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the voice of the waters. Za. Let me hear it. Whoosh. Ah. Whoosh. Za. Za. Whoosh. Ah. Za. We're not going to stop till I hear everybody whooshing. Za. Whoosh. One more time. Za. Whoosh. Za.
Can you feel the ancestors' breath here in this space and perhaps their sense of humor? The ancestors of our two congregations, the people who built and grew our two communities, who believed in the power of gathering, who have been present with us here under this tent each and every time we gather in this way. Today marks the last day that we will gather in this way for Sunday, for now. And I want to invite each one of us to take a moment for gratitude at the end of it all. So let's just pause and take a moment and maybe hold a hand over your heart if you'd like to, whether you're here or online. And let's just take a moment to think of one thing we are grateful for from these last 7 weeks that we have been together.
Do you have it? Let us hold that gratitude in our hearts as we transition from gathering as two communities. Let this gratitude guide us in future partnerships. May we remember the way that we have enriched each other's lives. It has been good to be together. And now, these words are in your order of service and on screen. And I'm going to ask you to join me for the final time in a little while as we all join together in the words used at First Unitarian and written by Maddie Cefantis. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. May we, amen. May we be together again. May your ancestors be honored by this service. May your heavy hearts be lightened by the singing of their names.
May you remember those who have died and honor their lives by telling their stories.
In our tears and in our laughter, in our joyful remembering and our complicated grief.
May our memories of love be held by our memory tree, so faithfully assembled and reassembled by Claire, by our gathering and by our collective hearts. And let the people of the church say, amen.
Amen.